Well guys, welcome to part 2 of our upgrade on the mini suspension. So as you can see, we have our Bilstein damper back here. We've got everything on here except for the top hat, so it's kind of all kept in place. But we're going to be putting on this fixed camber plate today. So what it's going to do is it's going to lean the shock in just a little bit more and give us an extra 1.25 degrees of negative camber in the front. That's going to help us handle a little bit better. And this is a big issue for minis because even some minis leave the factory with positive camber. So anything you can do to get negative camber on these cars is going to help. I believe my car has negative 1 degrees of camber in the front right now anyway. So getting to negative 2.25 is going to be perfect. You can get adjustable camber plates, but they can go up to $400. These are only $125 for a set. It's also going to act as a strut tower defender, so it's going to be 2-in-1 for that. You don't need a lot of tools to install this beyond what you need to go ahead and get the shock out of the way. You're going to need a 13mm wrench, you're going to need a 13mm socket, and you're going to need a 5mm Allen key. You'll also need some sort of way to remove the studs that are pressed into the top hat here. I just sat it over 2 pieces of wood with a little gap in between, 2 very gentle strikes with the hammer, and they popped right out. I'm going to keep them just in case I ever want to go back. Of course, now would be a good time to replace your top hat. Mine does have some tearing here in the top bushing, so I'll be sure to replace those soon. But because I want to go ahead and get this installed in the car and check my alignment and see if there's anything else we need to order, I'll go ahead and install them like this, and we can install new top hats in the future. So this is super easy. Once you're at this point and you have the studs removed, all you're going to do is place your camber plate on top of your factory top hat and line everything up. Then you're going to pick up these screws, slide these into each hole, and what they're going to do is sit flush, and you'll use these locking nuts to tighten them down on the bottom. Everything is 13mm, which is what your stock bolts are, so it's nice you don't have to have any extra tools than you already do. So we'll go ahead and install those. Now that that is installed, you can see how here is the center line of the new bolt pattern, and here's the center where the strut is, and it's moved in just a little bit. That's the way you're going to tell the difference between the left and right. My really only complaint about this kit is these are not stamped left and right or any sort of indication. You just have to figure it out yourself. If you do install them wrong, it wouldn't be horrible to swap them back. It would probably take you more than an hour. But still, I wish they were just took a little bit of extra time to stamp an L and an R into each one just to make sure it's easy for you to identify and put them on right the first time. So now that this is installed, the only thing you'll have to do is once you go to install this in the car, you have these 2 studs to mount it in, and then you'll put in this bolt from the bottom, and then you'll tighten down your regular nut on the top. But really, that's all it is to it. So you just install it on your top hat. If your top hat is a little warped because your strut towers are deformed, because that's a common issue on these cars, it will pull them back flat again, which is a nice little bonus. Like I said, it's a strut tower defender, which normally run about $100 anyway, so for an extra $25, you're going to get added negative camber and the strut tower defender. Of course, I have the ECS tuning ones on top, so I'll just go ahead and keep using those just for a little bit of extra rigidity. It never hurt to have a rigid mounting point for your suspension. So now we're going to pick up back where we were with part 1, where we're going to go ahead and put this onto our strut and install it in the front. And then once everything's installed, we'll use my camber gauge and we'll check how much negative camber we have in the front now, and we can report how much change we had. So here's a shot of the camber plates on the car. Again, you can see the center line of this going right through the center of this ECS tuning strut tower defender, has placed the center line a little bit to the inside of the car, so this is adding more negative camber. You can see a little bit of the red peeking through, so it is nice that it matches my car. If for whatever reason that's something you care about, of course you could hit it with a quick coat of paint before installing it. Another thing to note is that if you do have adjustable front struts, you can still access that center bolt, so you can still adjust your compression or rebound. Really the only thing left to do with them is check the camber. So I've got my camber gauge. This is one I made myself. I will link up here in the top corner of the video to that, so if you don't know how to use this, I've got a couple of different videos on how I made this myself. But I went ahead and checked the camber on all 4 wheels. I just wanted to note that I do have the car leveled out in my garage. So we have 2 shims in the front corner. This is the lowest. 1 in the rear corner and 1 on the passenger side. The rear passenger does not need a shim. That is the highest point in the garage. But I definitely was surprised by the final results. I have replaced a lot of suspension components on this car. I replaced every single bushing on this car. And then, of course, we still have those top hats that we need to replace. I'll replace those the next time I'm in, and that may affect this number a little bit. But these are our final numbers. So passenger front, -1 degree, same as passenger rear. Driver front was -1.4 and driver rear was -1.8. So I'm happy with these numbers and the fact that they are all negative. They should all work well on track and still be mild enough for street use. But they're not as negative as I expected on the front, and they're not as negative as they used to be on the rear. So changing out those bushings has definitely adjusted the suspension. Most of the Mini is not adjustable. Really, all you can adjust is front and rear toe. Everything else is non-adjustable. Camber and caster you cannot change out with stock parts. Because the tires on the car are getting rotated and they're all four the same size, I'm not too concerned about these numbers. I think they are close enough that tire wear really shouldn't be an issue. Eventually, we may address this. But for now, these are the numbers we're going to keep. I am surprised the front isn't a little bit more negative. If this is -1.25 degrees of camber, that means that once I replaced all of my suspension components like I did, I would have ended up with positive camber in the front and neutral over here on the driver's side. So it wouldn't have been a great starting place for me handling wise. So I'm definitely happy I have these plates in here. I'm happy that I have the combination of the upper and lower strut tower defenders to keep this strut tower as firm as possible. A firm mounting point for your suspension is always a good thing to have. I really have no complaints other than the fact that I don't know why one of them has to be a bolt. I'm not sure why all 3 points aren't studs the same way they are in the factory top hat, and I wish they were stamped left and right. It was super easy to figure out. You just have to use a little bit of common sense, but still, it would have taken them an extra 30 seconds of effort to stamp them, and it would save me and everyone else some possible confusion on putting them on the wrong side. But other than that, I think they are great value for money. For an extra 20 or 30 bucks over top of a regular strut tower defender, they're definitely worth it. And even if you just need the camber, like I did, it's still a very, very cheap way of adding 1.25 degrees of negative camber in the front. They have been through 2 track days. They've done extremely well. And because of them, I think the car has handled extremely well. Tire wear also looks like it is very even. I've had these on for probably 5,000 miles and 2 track days now. Very impressed. I have no complaints other than those 2 little small nitpicks. Well, guys, I am sorry to report that R53parts.com is no more, and as they were the only source of those fixed camber plates, they aren't available anymore. The next price up is these Island Engineering fixed camber plates at $200, so $75 more than these. They do include a new strut bearing, which is a nice benefit, but at the same time, I'm not sure if that strut bearing is replaceable, so I think you have to replace the fixed camber plate as a whole unit if it ever goes bad. And as you start to get up to $200 for a fixed camber plate, you're starting to get into a budget range where jumping up to an adjustable camber plate isn't really that much more money, so the economics of it are starting to make less and less sense. You could maybe go ahead and R&D your own set of fixed camber plates. The money invested really wouldn't be that much, but you'd have a lot of time and back and forth trying to figure out the exact precise place to drill all those holes. So if that's something you want to dive into, of course, let me know that you've done it. But I'm really sorry about that, guys. Hopefully this video will still inspire you guys in some way, shape, or form, or at least educate or entertain. So, of course, if you have any questions or comments, feel free to drop those below. Hit that subscribe button, and I will see you guys next week.